Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. Today, myself and Simon are just going to have a quick conversation to try and answer a simple question about lead generation and to offer some ideas and tips you can hopefully implement in your own work. We hope you find it of value. So on this podcast, we tend to deep dive into the lead gen world and go quite deep into things, which is sort of the point. But I think now and again, it's kind of good to just strip it back to the ground level and just make sure everything we're talking about is clear. And I think one of those things we talk about a lot is validation. And I guess some people listening will be perfectly aware of what that is, but just for the sake of sort of really establishing and going deep into what that means, what do we mean when we say validation and lead generation?
When you said make it simple, it could be more difficult than that because it might mean different things to different people. But I'll explain it the way I think we
use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So ultimately, the way that we would use the word validation or verification, I mean, some people use them separately, but they're pretty interchangeable. If you look at the dictionary definition, they're like, it's like they pretty much mean the same thing. And what you're trying to do is make sure that the data that you're collecting is accurate and real. That's the ultimate aim of validation. And where it gets more complicated is more to do with how you apply it, what you apply it on, and when you apply it. So to give you a couple of scenarios around that, this front-end validation, which you would apply straight on the form, let's say you had a landing page or your website that a prospect was interacting with. So that could be you're collecting, title, first name, surname, email address and telephone number. And you obviously want to make sure that's accurate, because if it isn't, you might have paid money to have that lead generated, either via PPC, Facebook, it might be worth a lot of money. And also the prospect could be genuinely interested and put a wrong digit in or the wrong details by accident, and you might have no recourse of ever getting in contact with them again. So what you'd look to do is on the fields that effectively are contact fields is usually where you have validation. So telephone numbers, you're going to look to verify that the mobile number or the landline number is correct. Email address, you want to do a live lookup. When we say live lookup, some people mistake this. So this isn't for people who know about this, right? Because this is like, there's plenty of people and a lot of them are our clients, or we know them or speak to them. And there's a lot of lead generators and lead buyers and brands all over the world that understand it. But I speak to tons, literally people every day that don't fully understand what we mean by live lookups. So if you're doing, let's say mobile lookup or cell phone lookup called HLR, it doesn't work in every country to determine whether a number's live or not. It merely tells you which network they're on and which network they used to be on. But let's say we work in the UK, for example. Mm-hmm. What happens is the HLR actually pings the network that the user's mobile phone contract is with and determines against that whether the telephone number is live or not. And it can tell whether it's switched off, out of network, live, or a dead mobile number. So obviously what you're looking to do on the form is if someone enters a bad telephone number, so mobile number in this instance, but the same thing applies to email addresses or landline numbers, is stop them at that moment, let them know that it's an invalid telephone number so that they can change it and actually put a correct one in. And obviously this also stops people time wasting that are visiting the form. And if you're driving paid traffic to this is why it's so important, because you don't want Mickey Mouse data being entered on the form. You don't want people to leave the incorrect details. You want to get 100% real details. You can do stuff with the name as well. So I know you could put like a salacious name lookup on the form for names, or you can do stuff like famous people's names or two names together, like Donald Trump, that obviously are Mickey Mouse things. So that's validation on the front end. That's basically how it works.
And just something I want to come back to there, which you said, I just want to push you a little bit on it, is there are two strands to it. So there's like qualification and verification, which are kind of within the same umbrella, or
qualification of leads is slightly different, which is like qualifying that the person is suitable for your product or service. So that isn't validation in the sense of making sure it's accurate. It's making sure that, so I don't know, let's say I'm selling cars, and the first thing I want to know about people is, can you drive? So I ask them a question, can you drive? So anyone that says no, they're not qualified.
Okay.
So that the qualification is slightly different.
But it's all kind of making sure that the people are not only real, but also that they kind of could be customers of yours, or
I mean, I see that slightly differently. That to me isn't validation. That's ensuring that the person's desires or their position is qualified so that they can actually be your customer.
Okay, yeah.
So the validating them is then, is it a real person, basically?
Okay.
And that's the other thing with the form. This is why with low intent leads, that's what's really missing is the qualification.
Okay, I see. So it's like
so high intent is you usually gather. And this is why if you're collecting low intent leads, that qualification has to happen in the sales process.
It's interesting because it's interesting when you actually search validation or validating leads, and I think a lot of it might be B2B stuff, but they talk about like one of the biggest definitions is pulling out sales leads from every other type of lead, which is like a completely different thing to how we use it.
I think that's in the US. Yeah, I think in the US they do that. And well, this comes to another bit of validation that we don't actually use it internally at Datable, but people do use. This is why I was saying the definition is we use it. So that the other thing with validation is like creating rules, right? So say you can only sell to women and your form is collecting everyone. So anyone can enter their details in the form. But when it actually comes into a process to validate the leads, you create a rule that says, women send here or men send here, whatever it is, or over 50s, whatever the rules are. So that could be called validation of the lead, validating it. It's not validation in the sense of making sure it's accurate. It's making sure that you're segregating the type of person that you can sell to. But that to me is qualification.
Yeah.
Because whether or not you're collecting at the front end to say, are you male, female, and they go male, and you go, sorry, you're not, we can't help you. Even if you're doing it on the back end, that is still qualification. You're qualifying that person can actually be your customer. That to me isn't validating it. But I could be wrong. I'd love someone to tell me.
This is the thing, like whether that is wrong or whatever. What I wanted to establish was how we use it when we say validation, and make that clear, because you're right. Someone might listen to validation, just have a completely different definition in their head. And we have people who are listening or watching this in America. You can see from sort of the stats, or in different industries. And I think I wanted to just drill it down for that sense, so people knew exactly what we meant when we said it.
Yeah, and the good thing is that if we're wrong, which happens quite a lot, so it could easily be the case, we could just adjust it and go, oh, validation. Maybe it's that. Verification is this is accurate details, and validation is they can actually be a customer of us. But to me, that sounds like qualification.
Yeah, but I mean, it all comes down to the same thing, doesn't it? And they're all strands of the same idea, making sure that your brand or whatever is connecting with real people. And then beyond that, they have real intent to buy, and the kind of the degrees of that, it's all on the same message, making sure brands are connecting with real people who have real intent.
Yeah. So and this sort of brings us on to the other type of validation, which is like back-end validation. So we've talked about carry out on your landing page or website to ensure the accuracy of the details that the person's entering. If you're doing it on the back end, it typically means that you're buying the leads in from elsewhere. So you could have like a bunch of affiliates or publishers or whatever that you're working with that are all sending you leads. And what you're trying to do is confirm the accuracy of that data they're sending you, because you don't want to be buying the leads of non-real people or people you can't contact.
So if a lead generator, like a publisher or whatever, sends leads on, and then the person buying the leads rejects them based on the validation they've got, where does that who incurs that cost?
The lead generators.
So they need to have it as well, I guess, so just supported.
Well, this is why, but they don't necessarily always do it. This again comes back to the qualification thing, because what we said about having the rules in place where it could be like male or female that you might be able to sell to, the lead generator might not be able to apply that their side. So they're sending you the data and you're applying those rules internally. That to me isn't, again, validation. It's creating rules, right? Or something else, maybe it's validation. But the thing about buying leads and validating them is that when you and this is why it's like the importance of this depends where you are in the chain, right? Because if you're buying leads from third parties, and let's say you're buying them relatively cheaply, so they're £1 or something, £1 each. Even if you validate that data, it's so inexpensive compared to that £1. To validate a single record might be 2 pence, for example. Yeah. It's almost not, the cost of it and doing it doing it and the benefits of doing it far outweigh the cost of it in comparison to what you would pay for a bad lead. And if you're the front end lead generator, this is why the risk is on it, because you're paying typically by click, right? So you're running ads on PPC or on Facebook or wherever you're going to do it, and you're working in one payment metric, virtually always pay-per-click, and then you're selling it on the back end. And it's why it's astonishing that some people that work on pay-per-click don't have these sort of this validation or these rules and everything else in place to be able to make sure that the money they're spending, which is lost, by the way, like they can't recoup that. It's almost more important than the lead buyer potentially having it, because their risk is far greater. For the lead buyer, it's you want to remove people you can't sell to effectively. That's what they're looking to do, because if it then goes into a sales function or wherever it goes, it's just wasted time trying to contact like non-real people or whatever it is they're doing.
So for the lead generator, it's about making sure that you're delivering quality real leads to people. And I guess that's the kind of thing that will mean that the brands keep coming back to you for more leads and working with you because you're delivering them quality. But then for the brand, it's just about, I guess, just guaranteeing that what you're getting what you're actually paying for. Do brands do that? Do they buy leads and not bother to verify them and then just see a waste, or are we past that point, do you think?
Well, this is the incredible thing. Everything we're talking about, you could probably, I don't know what the percentages are. I'd love to find out. I don't know if a study could ever be done, but I see it every day. There's lots of people that don't have validation on their form when they're driving traffic on a PPC. There's lead buyers and brands that are buying leads that don't have any sort of validation. In fact, I was doing a demonstration of data with someone yesterday, and they said that they'd already bought something. I think it was 100,000 leads. And when they tried to send them an email, something like 25, 30,000 of them bounced because they were fake details. I was like, you've gone live with this campaign and you've not had any validation on it. We didn't know it was I think they said we didn't know it was possible and we didn't know we needed it. And in fact, I just done a LinkedIn post today where I talked about if you're buying leads, you need to work backwards from what your aim is, which is typically to turn someone into a customer, right? And so you're looking like the routes and the mechanisms that you're going to use in the process and everything else. And the first thing you've got to be thinking of is we need to confirm that is a real person that we're actually going to be contacting, right? That's what you'd think. But it's, and this is the interesting thing when we said, we're talking very simply and people, will understand this whatever else. A lot of people don't. They just don't know this world. They don't realize potentially how seriously you have to take lead gen if you're going to run it and spend money in it. And I think it's because it seems like a subset of marketing or sales in some cases. And it's not seen as like the important cog. It's more like making the sales is more important, or the message that you're actually putting out is more important, which they 100% are important. The actual process that you're going to create to push that message or make that sale usually comes down to the whole process that the lead actually goes through. And it's that you need to make sure is accurate and right.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it, because I bet people before have done lead generation, but they haven't put the correct validation on, and then they've thought, lead generation wasn't that successful because but it's because it's not been done properly. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Exactly, yeah.
It's almost like, I don't know, buying a car or something and then thinking, oh, that car doesn't work very well, but it's because you've not checked that everything works before you've even like got to drive it. And to do the same thing, with leads, if you're not treating them properly, then I don't think you can really measure how successfully lead generation is for you until you do it properly.
Yeah, when you look at bad lead generation, it typically always falls into two categories. You can literally put money on this. And some people might not like this, but you can see it. So you get a lot of really good lead generators and a lot of really good lead buyers and brands that know what they're doing, right? They have processes and they know all about validation and everything we're talking about. They've got a highly or a finely tuned model it all goes through. And not all agencies are like this. So I'm not trying to disparage them, but I've seen this a lot. Let's say you work with a big agency and you're a big brand and you give them £1 million and say, you want to create a load of brand awareness and make a load of sales and do whatever else. And so they go, okay, we'll do some TV, we'll do some press, we'll do some radio, we can do a load of social and all this brand awareness. Oh, and we'll put like 50 grand into or 100 grand into lead gen. And they might have like an idea of how that lead gen is going to run and the process it's going to go through, but they're not specialists in it, right? Like if you go to someone who buys leads constantly, we work, as you know, with some massive brands in the UK and in the US, some of the biggest, and they buy leads and they buy a lot of them and they spend a lot of money on it and they really think about the process. And what you'll see either agencies do or the brands that dip their toe in the water, these people would never do. They would be far more careful with their money and they'd be far more careful to make sure that people are real and they realize that just because leads are cheap and you get a lot of volume doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean you're going to make any sales. It doesn't mean you're going to get any brand awareness. It doesn't mean anything else. It just means the leads are cheap. And this comes back to this like how serious you're going to take this process. And it isn't just, go and stick 50 grand on that and go and waste the 50 grand. Like lead generation, if you do it properly and you go after sales qualified leads in particular, marketing qualified, slightly different. If you're filling a CRM to send emails to them, is it even worth it? I don't know. I'm sure there's some value in it. You really got to start looking at what is the end goal? The end goal is we're going to sell to them. Okay. How are we going to make sure that we can sell to every lead that we possibly get? So your first question is, well, we need to make sure that they actually can take our products. And this comes back to that qualification, right? Okay. So what is it that we're selling? So it could be anything. Right, these are the sort of questions, these are the steps that we need to go through to make sure we can sell to that person. Okay, we've done all that, we've figured that out. Now, how are we going to actually make sure that we're speaking to real people so that we can qualify them, so that we can sell to them? And that is where the validation comes in. Once you go back through this process and you start thinking about it, and then this informs your ad and the way, or how you're going to drive traffic. And the validation is like a big element of that, of speaking to the real person. What was your original question again?
I don't know. We tend to do this. We tend to just go off. And I think we've accepted that there's never going to be much structure to these. But I think it was just establishing.
No, you said there were the brands out there. I think you said there are other people out there that don't do this, and that's my point. Is I don't think this isn't done out of like they mean not to do it or anything. I think they just don't understand like lead generation effectively. They don't understand how to really maximize the opportunity of it. That's the problem. And it's up to us and other people in the industry and everything else to educate them. So hopefully this podcast is doing that.
Well, yeah, I think at the very least, like with this one, hopefully people listening have a clearer idea of what we mean when we say lead validation. And we're going to keep talking about it all the time. And yeah, we'll probably have to revisit it at some point when we do it.
There's another part that we haven't touched on, which is when the leads come in for a lead buy and the validation they run then, because they'll then run it. I know we have touched on that, haven't we? Did we touch on it?
Did we touch on, what do you mean? Like, as in when you're buying leads in?
The leads, yeah, we did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully people listening will understand what we mean now when we say validation, lead validation. And that'll make it a bit clearer, and moving forwards, it will make sense when we talk about it.
Or we'll change the way we talk about it.
Yeah, either or. Cool. Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast, the show for serious lead generators. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.